Namaste, Jai Bharat. I would like to speak of an epistemological point with Islam and Sanatana Dharma. Just a philosophical understanding of the epistemology, one aspect of the epistemology of these two religions, because these are mostly taught in this aspect, this part of the world. You look at Islam, they have a concept of the believers and the non-believers, the faithful and the kafirs. And what may be the relationship between the faithful and the conflict? That's upon what I am going to focus for the epistemological difference. Whatever is, one's attitude may be to the faithful shall be entirely different with the kafirs. The non-believers, the kafirs, are not really treated like one of the believers. They are different. So they, through this general conclusion, they don't deserve any special treatment. They are not to be treated at par with the faithful. So you can do any kinds of injustice with the kafirs. Do anything. With this, of course, is a general accepted discussion or principle. So, what shall be the relationship between the kafir and the faithful? It shall be one that of a necessary antagonism. They are not considered at all as even human for practical purposes. So the relationship between these two categories, the faithful and the kafirs, shall be one that of conflict and contradiction. Conflict, and it becomes a natural outcome of suppression of the kafirs and destruction of the kafirs. And you can do anything with them, which of course many say that it's permitted in their system of thinking. This is one phenomenon. Contradiction and conflict. On the other hand, why I am comparing this with Sanatana Dharma is because Sanatana Dharma, which of course is a different kind of expression of towards a transcendental, because it's based on a knowledge tradition, which is a knowledge tradition, I would like to call it as a Veda-Upanishadic knowledge tradition. Because essentially the Vedas and Upanishads are not religious texts, as religious texts are understood in the world, they are knowledge texts. That this is open to you. You can understand it yourselves. And what is the epistemology what should be our attitude towards the multiple? One of the beauty, or one of the real sensible thing in the Veda Upanishadic knowledge tradition, where of course I told you this Sanatana Dharma is an offshoot of the Veda Upanishadic knowledge tradition, that is an expression towards the transcendental. Like, just look at Rudolf Otto when he was trying to speak about religion, he made some kind of definition like this. If I'm right, what I read, if what I read is I remember rightly, it's a fundamental intentionality towards the sacred. It's mind's fundamental intentionality towards the sacred. That's how he looks at religion. Many other ways of looking at religion as well. So look at this phenomenon with Sanatana Dharma, otherwise Hindu Dharma. The nature of nature. This is interesting and important. The nature of nature as multiple and plural had been long realized by the scholars of the Sanatana Dharma. Since it's essentially a knowledge text, we have many scholars behind it. We at that time in Bharat used to call them as Maharshis, Rishis, Munis, Maharshis, different names, sages roughly in English. So the cosmos had been well understood by the ancient Bharatiyas, which of course is evident to you in front of through texts and of course the granite carving on the temple walls and understanding of many theological aspects of it. So the cosmos is multiple and plural. Naturally our world is also, which is part of cosmos, is multiple and plural. What ought to be your attitude towards multiple and plural is well spelled out. I won't take time because it might take long time, so I would like to conclude in a shortest possible sentences. That is, what ought to be our attitude? How should we take the multiple and plural? That's ultimately, fundamentally, it's one that of a coexistence of the multiple and plural. The nature of nature itself is the coexistence of the multiple and plural. That is the epistemology of the Veda Vinishadic knowledge tradition, which of course is coexistence of many. On the other hand, previously we have seen in Islam, it is not coexistence, it's the other question, the other is essentially different from you. So the natural relationship between the other and yourselves shall be one that of contradiction and conflict on a permanent basis. So on the one hand, you have a concept in religion which is of contradiction and conflict. On the other hand, the Sanatana Dharma speaks of coexistence of the multiple and plural. Now, the coexistence of the multiple and plural, when I say, you may find it not really very applicable in front of you, but it's made applicable in front of you through the questions of deities and temples present. Look at the concept of temples, or the practical aspect of temples in Bharat, outside Bharat or within Bharat, in Sanatana Dharma, and the deities within Sanatana Dharma. On the other hand, Semitic traditions would say there is only one ultimate reality God, may have his versions in different traditions, but in Islam, certainly no versions, only single. In Bharat, the ultimate reality is one, but the ultimate reality is entirely different from the concept of God which has been put forward to you by the Semitic traditions. The ultimate reality is shapeless, qualityless, in the sense beyond having shape, so shapeless, beyond having qualities, so unqualified, beyond having place of occupation, so it is nishprapancha. All these kind of things are discussed. It's beyond, because with a finite, simple, just borrowing this from Buddha, if the ultimate reality, if there is one, should be essentially infinite, and when you try to understand it, your mind is already essentially finite, so it's a contradiction. It creates a contradiction. A finite mind is attempting to understand infinite. But then there are methods of understanding. That's a different thing. But on prima facie or generally, you don't try to understand something which is infinite with a finite mind. Therefore, that kind of understanding is ruled out. That is there, number one. Number two, look at the, I was speaking about the on very practical level, the deities. There are many deities. How many? No one is really able to tell you. But then roughly people speak of an enormous number, 33 crores. Let that number be hypothetical and imaginary. Because I don't know that if there is a list of the inventory, if there is an inventory of the names of the gods and goddesses, all in small g in Bharat. There's nothing like that. The 33 crore, how they made is a technical thing, but whatever it is, the point is that there we have multiple deities. And of course, and obviously, unnecessarily, these deities are not infinite. They are not infinite, and they are not the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is akin to a principle or something akin to the concept of energy matter combination in physics. So here it falls into sense. When you compare it with the principle, with the understanding of physics, energy matter. So the ultimate reality is something similar to, or akin to, or maybe that itself is akin to the total quantity of energy and total quantity of matter, which is there as something which can't be created, as something which is which can't be destroyed, as something which has no permanent shape or position, etc., etc. So the concept of ultimate reality in the Upanishads, which is Brahman, is very close to this expression, something like that, energy, matter. And apart from that, there is a Sankhya system of philosophy which presents similar things in a similar way. And creation, there is no what you call creation in that sense, and the creation through an evolution of these two principles coming in contact with one another. Let that remain. My point is to say that multiple and plural The deities are multiple, so many deities, at least in one sense. So many deities exist. And how do one treats one deity? One may be for one particular deity, but he doesn't find contradiction between that deity and different deity. Look at the Hindu homes. So, suppose there are 5 members in the home, and each 5 members will be upasakas, means they may be worshipping different deities. It's not necessary they all worship the same deity. They have different deities. And these pattern of worship to different deities with distinct rituals, if they really go for ritualism, with distinct rituals, attitude, and even mantras, they don't contradict, they coexist. This, of course, is because of the epistemology of coexistence. They contradict. Number 2. You may have places of worship all over the world, of all kinds of denominations, of all kinds of religions. But each sect in every religion do not go to the place of worship of another sect. They will stick to their own sect. They don't normally go to another sects. Whereas a Hindu doesn't have such concept of sects. You may accuse the Hindus of falling into castes, but when you analyze, when you unpack the concept of caste, the concept of caste is really nothing in front of the sectarianisms in other religions. So the Hindu doesn't bother which is the deity in the temple. He looks at the temple, and if he really wants to go in, he goes in. He doesn't first really look at the deity, what it is. He enters with folded hands. Then he looks at deity, prays everything. The thought that which is the deity might hardly come to his mind. Or when he goes in and sees deity, he does that particular prayer is meant for that deity, if he remembers. Otherwise, he makes his own prayer and praise. So there's no contradiction between multiple temples, having multiple deities. Everyone goes everywhere. That is the epistemology of coexistence. Everyone goes everywhere. Another thing, you look at the temples of the Hindus. No one bothers to find out who controls the temple, or who administers the temples, or who has created this temple, if it is recently made. Otherwise, we don't know. Most of the temples are very ancient. Who manages this temple, we don't care. Who manages the temple, who runs the daily show, we don't know. We don't want to find out. And that doesn't matter. Nobody stops you from entering into the temple. You enter a temple. You enter into the temple, you just do the prayer as you know, as you understand, performs, and then it comes back. So this is the epistemology of coexistence in action. That in the same house, many people pray in many different ways. Epistemology of coexistence, because they all do coexist. And with all these variations, they are variations, not differences. With all these variations, it's natural for the Hindus to coexist. So here is a religion which is based on an epistemology of coexistence, and there is a religion which is based on the epistemology of differences. And that differences which creates conflict and contradiction, and this coexistence really leads you to oneness, of smooth coexisting of the multiple and plural. This is an area where one can think of, and this is an area from where one can make further studies, and this is an area which needs to be expanded and let it get into the minds of people. Not that one should switch over to the religion of some other faith. Not really necessary, because for Sanatanis, we know the faiths are multiple and we know that they all are the same. Rigveda says, Egam Satvi Prabhavadavadanti. It's all the same, we understand it. Not that you have to do it, but try to make yourselves a patron or a pattern of coexistence of the multiple and plural. At least as individuals, one can escape from contradiction and conflict. That hate philosophy may cease to exist, and if at least it may get reduced in its power. Hate philosophy you can do away with, and with hate philosophy you have to do contradiction, conflict. So this is one method of understanding Sanatana Dharma. Not that you have to become. There's no point in become until you wish. Not that you have to change, but then see how things work here and try to understand the principle, of which is the epistemology of coexistence. So we may meet again with some other thought. Till then, Namaste, Jai Bharat, Jai Sri Ram.